So, Avenged Sevenfold's Hail to the King is the follow up to Nightmare. Now, Nightmare, when they recorded that album, while they were writing it and everything, and just starting the recording, their drummer passed away. And they had the album written out and everything. They had some things already put in. But obviously they needed to finish the rest of it and get another drummer in to basically finish the drum parts and everything. So they had to go through all that and finish it up while in the mourning process. So Hail to the King being the follow-up, they need a new drummer. So this will be basically the second drummer this band has ever seen. And the first person to ever replace the Rev on drums, who was their friend who died. And it's the first album they have ever written without the Rev. So, the idea I find behind this album is they didn't really feel up to it. Like, they had to do something, but I don't think they were really ready for it. I don't think they ever would be. It's something they had to just get out there and do. Because no matter how long they wait, it's always going to be the first album without the Rev. It's always going to be the first person behind the drums set since the Rev passed, basically, doing an album without him. So that was always going to be in the back of their minds, so they just had to go and do it. But trying to think of all these nifty things and coming up with all these unique ideas and do great drumming, I just don't think that was in them. They just wanted to do something extremely simple and get it done. Obviously do something good. They're not just going to do whatever. They want to do something really good, but they don't want to, really push the boundaries. And I don't think they wanted the first person to come out on drums since the Rev to basically go in reviews and magazines with this drummer is on par with the Rev, if not better, immediately after the first album since him. So I believe that's the reason they just wanted it more stripped back and simple. It's the first album without the guy, so that was it. The guy they replaced was the guy they had replace the Rev was a kid called Aaron Alj, something like that. He was in a band previously, but it wasn't really a well-known band in the slightest. It's just a young kid. He's not really well-known at all. Like Mike Portnoy finished the drums on the previous album, but they said no to him joining because they said he's such a big name that it could take out the Avenged Sevenfold name, because people come see Avenged Sevenfold for Mike Portnoy when they want it to be Avenged Sevenfold, not Avenged Sevenfold with Mike Portnoy or Mike Portnoy and Avenged Sevenfold. It's just Avenged. So they had people audition and they came across this kid who could play everything. He was really good. So they hired him, and it took him a while apparently to get used to the drum set and doing some of the songs, because some of them apparently he did actually struggle with. And while in the studio, he wanted to do, the things that you expect the Rev to do, but the band kept saying, no, you do it simple and slow down. So he wanted to prove himself that he had to basically do basic drumming, and that is what he did. And this was the only album to have him, because after this album they fired the guy. So the album is basic, as I've said, and they haven't really said why, but I do believe that is the reason. And even the album cover is bare bone basic. It's basically the album cover of Waking the Fallen, but you only get half of the death bat. Basic and basic. Apparently the album cover was going to be something else, which would have been a lot better. Because apparently the album cover was going to be the single cover for Hail to the King. So the cover they have for the single Hail to the King, that was actually going to be the album cover. But apparently when the public saw it, they said it was absolutely awful and terrible. So they made that the single for Hail to the King, and then they made this lazy cover, the album cover. So that's basically the backstory to everything. Sinister changed his amp. I think he changed the amp though in Nightmare, but I believe he's using the Marshall amp, as previously on the self-titled and City of Evil he was definitely using a Mesa Boogie, which is a heavy gain American amp. Now the Marshall is not as heavy gain in the slightest. He uses the most heavy gain of the Marshall, but it's nothing really as big and powerful as a Mesa, and it's also British in sound. But I don't know if Hail to the King was the first experience with his own make of amp, which is the Hellwin. So maybe the Marshall, or it may be the first time outing with his Hellwin amp. But getting into the first track, which is Shepherd of Fire, this has an intro. Basically every single starter of an Avenged album has a type of introduction. So this one starts with the sound of fire, Shepherd of Fire, so that's how it goes. It's like crackling fire. You get a kind of old school haunting bell sound. And then you have Sin come in, maybe Zaki, but I'm going to say it's Sin, doing the guitar rhythm. It's not a lead or anything, it's just a rhythm. And he just does it, but he holds it near the end, and then he repeats it, and then he repeats it over again, and then again. And there's some horns playing at certain times under him. And then eventually the bass and the drums come in. Just going at a quicker pace than what Sin's doing. Not awfully quick, but it's definitely faster than what Sin is doing. And that goes on for a fair while again. Like it takes over a minute for it to actually get into what the actual riff is. But then eventually it kind of all cuts out, and Sin does some dun 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 dun, and then you kind of hear a kind of explosion sound, and then the actual rhythm comes in. Now the verse, Matt's just singing typical. There's no special tones to his voice or tricks and effects. It's just typical. The riff that's going is palm muted, I think, just kind of palm muted chugs with a few pauses here and there, and then some kind of open unpalm muted hits. I don't even know if he's fretting anything. It's just dun 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 dun, and then all the palm muting again. It's extremely simplistic. The chorus doesn't really change much from the verse, to be honest. Matt kind of sings in a bit of a higher register. It's not extremely special. And Sin and Zaki, the rhythm is basically just kind of long hits out on the strings. Just let it sound out and then kind of go back to it. Nothing major going on. The verse creeps into the chorus, and Matt does a creepy kind of singing style, and then it goes back to the chorus. So in between the chorus, Sin is doing the verse sound, and Matt is doing a kind of darker, kind of growly voice. Then back to what the chorus actually is, and it goes back to the verse, and then back to the chorus. And then you get into the solo. The solo is very good. It's long, it's flashy, it's got melody. At one point he does the melody to the overall sound of the song. And then he comes out and does a bit of shred, then he goes back into the melody of the song. And then he kind of does some bits of shred, some holds and everything, and then he dive bombs it out, which is quite typical of Sinister Gates. So his solo was long. It had the musical aspect of what the song actually sounds like in there. He had a lot of shred, and then he had a lot of holds and kind of really fun sounding slides, just and then the typical dive bomb, which he always does. And then it goes back to the fire type of sound, and Matt's doing a kind of whispering singing along with the sound of the verse, but it's the first part of how that intro started with what Sin was doing. So the slower version without the dual guitars, it's just one layer guitar going. And then it gets back to the actual chorus and then leaves. And that is basically the song there. Hail to the King, the title track. Sinister does an awesome lead. He starts the song off again. And you get bits of the rhythm coming from Zaki as well as the drums. But it takes its time, so it's again a build. So Sinister's just doing all that lead work, which is quite fast. I think it's a little tricky as well, what he's playing. And then every now and then Zaki does the rhythm, which is a very sick sound, a very thick sound. Dun 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 dun. So it's a simple rhythm, but it's extremely thick and heavy, and it's catchy. Like you can really bob your head to it because it's so thick and got the nice slow, easy beat to it. The drums do the kind of pounds to the dun 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 dun, and the drums are going, and then eventually it comes full into it, and then the rhythm kind of keeps going without a long pause. And a bit more into it, Sinister does what he's been doing, but in a different location of the guitar, so he's still doing that lead and everything, but it's a bit kind of brighter in sound. And then he keeps that going the entire time. Just before he hits the chorus, I think he changes the location again because it changes up again in tones, but it's still the kind of same trick, kind of fast, kind of sounding, difficult sounding thing he's doing. It's not two-handed tapping, although I'm sure someone could mistake it for it, but I'm pretty sure it's not two-handed tapping. I think it's a lot of kind of picking and hammer on and pull offs and get all them really unique sounds and making it sound quick without it being overly complicated, because the point of the album was to not make it complicated. But this does sound very hard, but I think he tricks it, so I think it's hammer ons and pull offs. I think, I could be wrong, like I do know a fair bit about guitar, but there is a lot about guitar, so basically I also know nothing about the guitar while knowing a fair bit, if you get what I mean. But yeah, when it gets to the actual chorus, it's extremely repetitive. Just hail to the king, hail to the one, kneel to the crown, hail to the king. Now, obviously, if you went that fast, then the chorus would be extremely short. So he definitely lengthens it out. So hail to the king, and then Sin has a da na 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 na. And then the next part, kneel to the crown, or hail to the crown, or yeah, hail to the crown, and then da na 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 na. So Sin does a lead to kind of break up the voice part to lengthen the chorus out. It's very good live, obviously, because of this, because you get the da na 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 na, which is a kind of really nice, very simplistic sound, because there's not much lyric in the chorus. It's extremely easy to do. And everything, so easy to sing, you have your pauses, it's easy to remember, and it's simple and it's catchy and rememberable and easily accessible as well. And then you get back into your verse, and you get back into the chorus, and then you get the solo. A lot of people really like the solo with this one. It's still good, it's still Sinister Gates, but I prefer the solo Shepherd of Fire. I thought that was a tiny bit more musical. Hail to the King, the kind of sound and tone to it's a bit kind of stale kind of thing. It's kind of glass sounding. It's just really quite piercing. There's not really much warmth to it, I think. So there is again the melody to it and the shred. Sinister never really fully goes intense shred. He usually tries to break it up and add a bit of musicality to it. and he does the Hail to the King. I just think Shepherd of Fire was more musical. This one it's kind of just like more kind of mechanical, so it's like he does shred and then he does slow it down where it's needed, but there's not really heart there. It's just, okay, it has to be slow, so I'm just going to slow it down. But there's not much real thought in it like Shepherd of Fire. But again, that's basically the song. Doing Time starts, well, to be fair again with Sinister Gates, and Matt's actually at the start of this one, so Matt starts with a kind of evil laugh, and then is saying some kind of lines. It's kind of like Backcountry, to be honest. Because Backcountry, it's like he makes a beast out of himself, gets rid of the pain of being a man, and in Doing Time, it's the evil laugh, and then it's like the lives of some men. If walls could tell the truth to spell the lies, we see the world through devil eyes. Something like that. I think I got it wrong, but it is along the lines of that. And then in Backcountry, does the kind of growl thing, and in this one he does that similar as well, because after he does the lines, it's just a yeah kind of more singing one, and then Sinister does the kind of slides and everything, and then he goes into the growl. Well, Sinister's doing all the kind of whammies and slides and holds and everything, which he's accustomed to again. And then he does a bit of a whittle, not shreddy type of whittle, just a da na 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 na, and then it gets into the actual verse then. And the verse of this one is very American. This is a very Americanized song. The kind of imagery it kind of puts in my head is being in the 80s American bar with a lot of bikers. That's the kind of mental picture the song gives me. It's very American, it's very 80s in sound, and it's a song like Doing Time, so Doing Time in prison, so it's that kind of badass kind of song, badass kind of sounding and everything, going at the pace, very kind of fun and everything. So the biker bar in the 80s, metal. So that is kind of the vibe this puts out and everything. I think that is also what they were probably going for. So very American in sound. The solo for this one is one of the worst, to be honest, because it seems that the solo is the introduction, but the solo actually never actually starts. Because it's like Matt kind of screams, and then he's doing all the real holds and everything, like wah wah, and it's like here it comes, and then he just goes da na 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 na, and it's just over, and that's it. It's like, so basically the solo is just a kind of hold leading to the solo, but he didn't then do the solo. So it's kind of a bit weird, to be fair, the idea he was going with for this solo. But that is basically it. Song is one of the shortest, if not the shortest, so there's not really much to it. This Means War is basically a Metallica song off the Black Album. I forgot the name of what it actually is, but the title, but it's the Black Album by Metallica, and it's either the second or the third track. I'm pretty damn sure, but as for the name, I don't know. But yeah, the riff is just Metallica. Like, there's only a subtle change to it, but it's seriously just Metallica. And it goes along. The chorus is very simplistic. There's not much to it. And the solo is the first for Sinister Gates, because he uses the wah pedal to do this solo, and Sinister has never used it. If what he says is to be took as correct, because he did have an interview where he said that the solo in this he uses the wah pedal, and he's never used the wah pedal. So this is the first. How does he do? He does pretty damn well. He's good. He knows what he's doing. He knows how the wah works and everything. He's just not really used it in a solo, or maybe even a song. But he's, a talented musician, so he knows what he's doing. So it's good, and I wouldn't mind seeing more, to be honest. because obviously that will be even more variety to Sinister Gates, and Sinister Gates is a very varied style of guitar player. One reason why I really like the guy. So it's that Requiem starts off quite weird, very old school choir singing, like a haunted church choir, very old school sounding haunted movie, and the rhythm that's going, it's quite creepy, the verse, and how it kind of goes with Sin doing the kind of creepy lead, and then everything's kind of slowly, it's like the sound is slithering, is probably a decent way to explain it. It's obviously the way it speaks to me, and people may get a better way of explaining it, and the way it sounds to them, but the verse kind of sounds kind of slithering, and slowly the way it kind of moves, and everything. And the solo in this one, a lot of bends and everything, and shred, very typical Sinister Gates as per usual. Crimson Day is the melody, sounds like Nothing Else Matters. Like it's the exact tone of Nothing Else Matters. Like down to a T, it's the exact same sound of Nothing Else Matters. I think that is the song, which tone I'm thinking of. I think it is. It may be a different Metallica song, but I think it's Nothing Else Matters. It's nice sounding though. Like the tone is nice. The song sounds nice. The chorus does pick it up a bit, but it's not heavy. It's not aggressive. It's just basically it turns the gain up a bit, and it's just down, 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 and then it gets into the chorus, and then at the end Matt kind of sings and projects it a bit more, but again pretty simple. The solo is a really nice melodic solo. I think there's a teeny bit of flash in there, but overall there's not much shreds and everything. It's just nice, carefully thought out melodic with a bit of skill in there, and it's not one of the best, but it's still very, very, very good because it's Sinister Gates. Next song, Heretic. Now Heretic, the verse, Matt sings without guitars, so Matt will sing only with the bass and drums playing, and he kind of whispers it, and then Sinister will then come in and play a bit, and then disappears, and then Matt comes back again with his whisper and just the bass and drums, then back to Sinister, and then back to Matt with the bass and drums, but instead of whispering, he kind of yells it a bit more in that typical powerful Matt Shadows style voice. And then the chorus is quite fluid in sounding, and at the end Matt kind of holds the note in his gut, so he kind of holds it down there, but pushes it out, type of sound. The solo in this does kind of come in incredibly well, like it really introduces itself, because it doesn't have really that much of an introduction to it, and it doesn't start gradual and kind of build. It just, okay, here I go, and that's it, and you don't really get a here I go. It's just basically and it's so bright, it's extremely piercing in sound, and it just comes out of nowhere, so it's like, geez, wow. And it's very loud, it's extremely piercing, kind of glassy in sound, and it's fast, it screams musically, but it, even though it's kind of musical, it kind of screams because it's got that real piercing sound to it. But it's really good sounding solo, and the way it just kind of comes in out of nowhere so abruptly and powerfully. It's really cool just how that solo just starts. Just basically how it starts is amazingly good. So before the solo, you really get anything from the solo. It's just that start is incredible. Coming Home is my favourite song off the album because it's pretty much Iron Maiden in sound. So this is obviously the influence for this song. It's Iron Maiden. Just the way it flows and everything. Iron Maiden is great with the flow of the songs and everything and things like that. So really good. The solo is just ridiculous. It's shy of 2 minutes, so it's over a minute and a half, and that is a long solo. And he keeps it interesting. Like, it's not just the same style, just shred. He starts it one way of shred, then it goes to kind of melodic, and then he kind of takes it to really melodic, and then he takes it to sounding like it's gonna end. So just to kind of doing da na 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 na, and it's like, okay, the solo's coming to an end, and then all of a sudden, and then he just starts it again. So it sounds like it's a dual solo, but one solo never ended. Because it's the whole thing, but it sounds like there's the solo, and then it's the interlude from him, and then the second part of the solo. The second part doesn't really last long. I think it's just kind of just a trick to just, because you expect it's over. You seriously do. It's not just me. I think everyone will expect it's over, but he doesn't end it. It carries on. Not for long, but it does. And again, it's over a minute and a half, and there's so many changes to it. He fakes the outro to it, so it's just a nice kind of sounding da na 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 na. It's like, okay, this sounds nice, so getting ready to get back into the song. Oh no. And then it's just like, okay, here we go, and then he abruptly ends that, and it's just like, Jesus, now he's just left me hanging. It's so amazing how he kind of did that and thought about that. I don't know if that was the idea, to kind of give you such a long solo, then think it's going to end, then give you a solo, make it last a teeny bit, and then abruptly cut you off. Like, if that was the case, he's so good at thinking about what he's doing. But then the rest of the song is very Maiden sounding, so I really like Maiden. I love Sinister Gates, so best one in my opinion. Planets, a lot of people really liked this song. I don't know why. Everything's quite typical. The chorus is just planets collide, planets collide, planet. It's boring. It's repetitive. The chorus is just planets collide, planets collide, planets collide, planets collide. That is extremely lazy and kind of what you expect in a pop album. So that is very insulting, and I don't like that I've said that, because it's sevenfold, and I don't want to say that about them, but that is the case. Like, I have to be accurate and truthful. It's very lazy. It's kind of the poppy way, because they can't think of anything. So it's lazy. It's repetitive, and the line just planets collide is a little cheesy. So, no. You get some kind of horns and everything in there, and which adds some uniqueness to it, I guess. The solo bursts in again, so after the chorus just going to planets collide, planets collide, and the sentence is just going mentally, introducing himself to the solo, so the introduction to that is great, and the solo again is obviously great. Sinister Gates. Acid Rain, the final track, is a very unusual track. You would say melodic, but it's not exactly melodic. It's just, it's quite bluesy, the song. So there's piano throughout it. I think it's a piano. I don't think it's a keyboard. And Sim kind of comes in and out a lot, and just with a lead interlude every now and then, just coming and going. Very bluesy. Then the piano going, which can be in a lot of blues. The solo is heavy blues, because he keeps going and then stopping. He doesn't stop as long as a lot of other blues plays. It's just like a second or two, stop, pause, and then back to it. But it's extremely blues based, very influenced by the blues to solo. After he's done with the solo, Matt comes back to sing, and Sinister is still basically doing solo, but it's the blues style again, so it's a lot of kind of pausing and going and pausing and going, but it's not interlude or anything, it's still kind of a lead. And the song finishes with the sound of thunder and rain, acid rain. So that's how it ends. It lasts longer than it needs to. Like, I know it's the end of the album, so it's just like slowly fading out. But it's the sound of like thunder and rain for like an entire minute. It's a bit long just to kind of listen to rain and thunder. So you just kind of turn it off, really. I don't see why you need to sit there and listen to it. So that's the album. So basically, it's going for the sound of the 80s. It's copying a lot of what bands did in the 80s, taking their sound, copying their sound, stealing their sound. It's extremely bare-bone basic. The riffs are very basic. You get the odd one which sounds a bit technical, but they did say they want it to be basic, so I think it's just a bit of trickery to the ears, but actually it is easy and simple. Yeah, everything's simple. The drumming is extremely simple. The songs are pretty short. Like, the longest you get is like 6 minutes or something, which is long for a fair few bands actually. But for Avenged Sevenfold, that is incredibly short. The majority of songs are around 4 minutes. Not a lot of variety through the songs. You basically just kind of get the verse and the chorus, and that's basically as much as you really get. You get a chorus, and sometimes you get something before the solo, or something just after the solo. On the odd occasion you get something before the solo and after the solo, but usually it's just a bit of something beforehand, and then you get the solo, and you get back to the chorus or something. So the simple structure that every band kind of does, and nothing really broadening it and changing it. Both verses are all both the same. One verse isn't different to the other, so it's not this is the verse and the second verse we're going to change it. Don't really get that. The choruses usually all stay exactly the same as well. And then the sounds that they come up with, obviously, they've stolen a lot of sounds from previous bands. Is it a whole brand new unique sound that's not been done before? No, it's the sound of the 80s. So obviously a lot of bad because of everything I've just gone and said. This Means War. That is Metallica. Crimson Day, Metallica. Coming Home. That's Iron Maiden. And then the sound throughout, so the vibe is always 80s. 80s metal. Now, it's called Hail to the King, so you may think the idea they went into was it's a tribute to the bands they adore. They're doing the sounds and styles of the bands they love, they listen to, they were brought up with, is what made them them. They are basically doing their best to be their idols and support their idols and show love and recognition for their idols. It ain't a bad thing. It is fine. But this album is going to be a 7.9. Now, a lot of people I have seen when people do reviews and they do the 0.9, it's like, so basically it's an 8. And it's like, no, it's a 7.9. Yeah, but it's like 0.1, so it's an 8. No, it isn't. And the reason for it is 8 is very good. And this is a very good album. So if it's a very good album, why am I not giving it an 8? Basically because the There's other albums which I've given an 8 to. And Avenged Sevenfold, this album, is better than them 8s. Which is making everything sound very weird, but I have to... The way you review is what the band's capable of, the style they are, what they do. And that's how I should review them, because if I compared everything to Avenged Sevenfold, there'd be a lot of bands which I'm giving like 2s to. So I have to do it on what they are capable of. That's how I have to do it. Avenged Sevenfold are a lot better than bands I've given 8s to. But as for Avenged Sevenfold, they are better than this. Which is why it's not very good. It basically is, like, it's 0.1. And the reason why it's not 7.5 or 6 or 7 or 8, it's 0.1 off of 8 for being very good, is because it does come very close. It is a solid album. It is a very good album. But it has too many mistakes. So I don't want to give it that very good. Because the thing is, there's too many problems. But it's such a solid album and effort. I don't want to just give it a flat out 7 or a 5. Because it is very good. But obviously the mistakes, I cannot just take pity on it. I have to be a critic, and I am getting it in the 7s. But it's still as close as it can be to a very good album. Because as I said, they copy sounds. They copy the sounds of other bands. They copied the riffs off of other bands. So they're not even just kind of doing, oh, we're going to do an 80s sound. It's like, no, they've took a complete riff from a band that was in the 80s and just copied it. That's not really good and ingenious. The structure is very simplistic. Matt's singing style isn't as varied as he's done on other albums. There's no unique sound, there's no great structure. The songs don't kind of evolve over time. There's not a lot of sounds in each individual song. From song to song to song, there's not a very unique, diverse sounds either. It's not a sound that's extremely new that I've never even heard before. Like the stage, there's nothing like it. And things. The length is extremely compact compared to others. So when it comes to Avenged Sevenfold, they are capable of a hell of a lot more than this. Avenged Sevenfold can do way more sounds, way more structure, way more diversity and uniqueness, and come up with something that's never even been done before. Like, I don't know how easy they find it, but I personally think Avenged Sevenfold know how to make a brand new sound that's never been touched. So this is why it goes all the way down, and I can't give it very good because there's a lot of copy and pasting, and it is lazy for what Avenged is. Now bands like Tremonti, The Dying Machine, is Hail to the King more talented? Hell yes it is. But why is Tremonti so high? Because that's Tremonti. And I'm reviewing it for Tremonti. This is Avenged Sevenfold and I'm reviewing it for Avenged Sevenfold. That's how the scoring's working. And why I'm not giving it a flat out 7, so why do I want it to be very good? Because I haven't actually said that. So the reason for why I really wanted to give it the 8 of very good is because Sinister Gates is a bloody legend. No way around it. He is unbelievable, and whatever he's in, nothing can go that low. If everything stinks and Sinister Gates is in it, it would be high, because his solos are so damn good that it doesn't give 1 point of. Well, there's guitar, so that's 1. No, Sinister Gates, you get a fair few points just because it's him. The vocals, although not very varied, they are good and everything like that. And what they are going for, so doing the sound of the 80s, they do the sound of the 80s incredibly well, like nailed it. If other bands try and do the sound of the 80s, it's either kind of ruined or they don't fully grasp it. It doesn't really come across well. This comes across. It's the sound of very good 80s, not the bands that was really bad in the 80s. It's extremely good. extremely great sounding, really fun, very easy. It's the most accessible Avenged Sevenfold album because it's so simplistic. So if you're not really into the metal vibe and you're not used to Avenged Sevenfold, Hail to the King would be the album you would suggest because it's simple. It's just a bit of a nudge and something that's not going to be so overwhelming to the senses. Like, imagine just giving someone like City of Evil or The Stage and they're not used to metal or something that grand in nature. It's a bloody overload. Hail to the King is easy and accessible, and it's fun and memorable because everything's so stripped back and they're basic. There's not such an overload of things to remember with so much variety that it's an overload to the senses. This is all kind of, okay, so this is the verse, dun 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 dun, and that's catchy, and that is it. Easy to remember. So, yeah, it should be very good because they really do the 80s sound incredibly well. One of the best, probably even better than some of the bands that were in the bloody 80s. Avenged Sevenfold do it incredible. It sounds exactly like it's from the 80s. It doesn't sound, well, it is modern sounding, but it's like they lived it. They were there. They grew up with it. They were one of the people who were there inventing metal and changing the world. And that's kind of what it sounds like. It sounds like they're better than some of the 80s bands that were back then. They do things better than the original. A lot of people will argue that, but because this is my favourite band, them doing it, I'm going to think they're better. Sinister Gates is incredible. The rhythms are incredible. The drums, even though they're simplistic, the beats really know when to give it a good kind of pounding, and the simple cymbal taps to keep everything kind of quiet and mellow. It's all very well thought out for the simplicity. It's not just bare bones simple. Everything sounds good. Everything is catchy. Everything is rememberable. Everything sounds awesome. The solos are amazing. They are technical. And everything else, it's a lot of fun. It's extremely accessible. Trying to do the 80s famous gods like Maiden, Ozzy, Sabbath, Megadeth, Metallica, any. This fits perfectly in with them. And you could argue that if this was out around that era, that people would support this over bands like Metallica or Megadeth or Maiden. Now, I know Maiden's really good. Like, they are big and probably the biggest band on the planet and the biggest band that is ever going to live, because there's so many bands out there, it's kind of hard to achieve what they did. But Hail to the King, it's so good of what the sound was back then, and they nailed it so well with such ease. And they have such a good guitarist and great sounds, and it's so accessible and everything that I think if it came out back then, it would have been massive and a huge success. So because of that, 7.9. Because it's great at the 80s, it's got great guitar playing. The simplicity of it is all great. They really did think about it to make everything work. So it's not just simple, it's simple, that's it. It's simple, but it sounds good, it has its purpose, it's doing what it needs to, and everything. And everything like that. But why it cannot be the 8s and the 9s and the 10s is obviously because for Avenged Sevenfold, they do their own sounds that no one else has done. This sound has been done before. Avenged Sevenfold do crazy things musically with them instruments. This not really. Everything is extremely basic apart from Sinister Gates when he does a solo. Other than that, everything is basic. Structure, very basic. The lyrics are very basic, and there's hints of medieval sound in there as well. Subject matters on other Avenged Sevenfold things are very big and grand in size and scope, and quite difficult for young audiences to kind of comprehend, because they're talking about subject matters which are so beyond them. So there's that and everything. and then the unique sounds, and then the lengths, and how they can keep such a long song and go through so many changes through the songs. All that is not here, so it is so unlike Avenged Sevenfold. But then again, it's extremely like Avenged Sevenfold, because this is completely different for Avenged Sevenfold, and that is what Avenged is. Avenged is never a single thing. Avenged is very hard to explain and describe, because they're not caged. They are just unleashed with so much range and an unstoppable force that it's kind of really hard to explain them. The best way I explain Avenged Sevenfold is just a band that keeps changing, keeps evolving, and has a shit ton of talent. Other than that, it's quite difficult to really explain what they are. So, Hail to the King, it's very restrained, which is not Avenged Sevenfold. It's an 80s sound, which they've never done before, and they nailed it. So, again, it is extremely different. So, to a degree, it's Avenged Sevenfold and what they always do. So, yeah, I've given you the positives of why it's so good, which is why it's very high up in the 7s of 7.9, but why it cannot be 8 because of all the mistakes and what Avenged Sevenfold is known for, and because this fell flat quite badly. But even because it fell flat and they could have done a hell of a lot more, this is extremely solid for what they did. Very, very solid. But because they're Avenged Sevenfold, it cannot be a very good, solid album. But because it is still very good and solid, I'm getting it as close as I can. Difficult album, basically, but I think 7.9, a lot of people may disagree, but to me, and I hope I've explained it well, it's as best as you can do. It really fits a 7.9. And, yeah, so that'll be it from me. If you like the video, leave a like so I know that people are enjoying the way I'm doing this. If you dislike, then by all means leave a dislike, and I would really appreciate it if you leave the comment of why and how to improve. So then I can, get better and hopefully do it more to your liking, and then maybe you may subscribe. Of course, if you like, then please subscribe, so then I can keep doing this and seeing that there is an audience and a purpose for me to carry on with this. And if you do, that would be amazing. So I hope that means I'll see you again in the next video. So thanks for watching. Bye guys.